and I have to bring out some partisan comments in this. There's no other way to do it. People seem to forget or not understand the workings of the federal government about who authorizes budgets, who writes the laws. That's the Congress and the Senate. And, all of the language talking about, the 8 years of the failed Bush economy. Well, I have to remind listeners that the Democrats took the Senate in January of 2005. That's 5.5 years ago. They took Congress in January of 2007, 3.5 years ago. So they effectively have controlled budgets and legislations for all of that time.
Well, I'm not going to dispute those points. Let me say this, though. I think it's fair to say that both parties got us into this.
You got it. I agree completely.
I think it's gotten decidedly worse in the last year.
Yes.
Given the choices that we took. But on balance, I think it is fair to say that both parties got us into this mess. And what we need now is leadership to get us out. And that's, you've looked at my record there. I don't have a long political pedigree. Quite frankly, I don't have any political pedigree. But what I do have is leadership, proven leadership that has come through in the toughest of times. I know who I am. I'm a principled conservative. I believe we've got a plan to address the core problems in America, and that is to get our private sector economy going, to balance our budget through reduced spending, and to help reorganize to win the war against al-Qaeda so that we secure our freedoms from threats from abroad and from wrong choices here at home.
I think one of the qualities, or maybe this is two of the qualities, ethics and integrity. I mean, to me, that is the foundation that people running for office has to be built on that.
Well, it comes from trust. And in trust, there has to be forthrightness and candor. And that's why I think all the partisan bickering that goes on, I don't find it helpful. What our campaign is about is there's no question, there's a clear choice before the voters, and I'll speak to that in a second, between myself and my opponent. But what our campaign is looking to attract, Republicans, conservatives, independents, Tea Party movement followers, and Democrats looking for a better way, all put together in a coalition that recognizes that we're on an unsustainable pace and path, and that we have to get off it, and we need to restore America through growing the private sector economy and balancing our budget through reduced spending. My opponent, he sends out many mailers, and there's nothing illegal about that. He uses the taxpayer money to do this. He's sent out multiple mailers. This has been covered on Channel 6 TV in the greater Capital District area. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of our money to promote himself and his campaign. Not illegal, but you know what? It does bring up the question of judgment. Because in these mailers, he professes to be a fiscal conservative and a budget hawk. And why would he spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to promote himself at a time that we are really strapped and we need to reduce spending? My opponent says this is Scott Murphy, and he says he's a fiscal conservative. And I say, with all due respect to the gentleman from Missouri, you may know he hails from Missouri. I say, with all due respect to the gentleman from Missouri, show me.
Yes.
Show me. Because Speaker Pelosi, she is many things. But among them, she is not a fiscal conservative. And in her defense, she would be the first one to say that. She would say, I'm not a fiscal conservative. But yet, my opponent votes with Speaker Pelosi 90% of the time. So, it just doesn't compute. Those votes that he has taken, he does not represent us. He was initially against health care, and then under pressure from the administration and from the speaker, he switched his vote, and he voted for that health care bill despite the fact that it was overwhelmingly unpopular in our district. And that's not fiscally conservative. That bill is going to end up with we're going to end up with higher premiums, more taxes, more regulations, and more big government. That's not fiscally conservative.
No.
My opponent voted for last summer cap and trade. I just held a series of press conferences on this topic with small business owners from throughout the district. A CEO of a machinist company in Dutchess, an apple farmer in Saratoga, and an owner of a John Deere establishment up in Washington County. And they all made clear, loud and clear, that the cap and trade bill was the wrong way to balance the environment and the economy. It's certainly not fiscal conservative, it climbs up on the back of small business owners. So once again, not a fiscal conservative. And then finally, my opponent co-sponsored in the earliest days of his time in the Congress the card check legislation. And this is not about pro-union, because I will tell you that we have union members that are supporting our campaign. That card check legislation is about supporting union leadership.
That's correct.
Out of balance movement with management. That's going to hurt our economy. I would tell you that card check is unpopular among a good number of union members because it's bullying. It denies a private ballot to average Americans, ordinary Americans, as to whether or not they unionize. And that's something that seems to me anathema to democratic principles, is that you're entitled to a private ballot. And then finally, my opponent believes that we're going to grow the private sector economy from Washington, D.C., and it's just not going to work. Remember how this was 17 months ago? Hurry up and pass that bill. No, stop what you're doing. Pass the bill right now so unemployment can stay below 8%, and unemployment went to 10%.
Yes.
And it's hovered there since. And incidentally, a couple weeks after the bill passed, all of a sudden there's this recognition that we're paying bonuses to the very same executives that got us in this mess. And then, Congress, well, we didn't know it was in there. That's the whole point. You move too quickly. You got to read the bill. So we were wrong on the choice, and we were wrong on the method. So it's time for accountability. We're not going to change course until we change leaders. A lot of Americans are out there are fed up. And what I would say is let's turn that into something positive. If you're not registered to vote, get registered and get active. And join our campaign, www.chrisgibsonforcongress.com. Come on, join our volunteers. Hit our Facebook, friend us, and stay abreast of the significant developments of the campaign. Tom, I appreciate this opportunity to be with you.
Chris, I want to go back to, I'm going to take just cap and trade for a minute. And if listeners look at the trajectory of where this will take us, and I will tell you that when Scott Murphy voted for that cap and trade bill at something like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we learned later that the bill hadn't even been written in its final form yet, he lost me at that point in time, and I'll tell you why. He claims to be a businessman. I do not know any businessman who would enter into a contract without having read it in its entirety and understanding and digesting it.
I think it's a fair point. And when I talk to reporters and to radio personalities such as yourself, I say, look, I have a decided point of view on this, but don't take it from me. If you go out and talk to small business owners. I have talked to small business owners all throughout the 20th district. As far north as Lake Placid, as far south as LaGrange and Poughkeepsie, and as far west as the outer reaches of Delaware County, and everywhere in between. And I will tell you, the small business owners, they have a very strong point of view on cap and trade. It's not the right way to balance the environment and the economy. The same thing goes for the health care bill. I have talked to doctors, healthcare professionals. I've talked to small business owners. This bill was unpopular. It's going to add new taxes, regulations across our economy. We have a thriving 21st century manufacturing sector in our district,
yes.
Medical device industries. This bill puts a new tax on that industry, 2.3% for each medical device, in a field that has a very small margin of profitability already, because they like to and they need to reinvest in research and development to stay on the cutting edge. And then you put a new tax like this, it's very damaging. And just as you point out, if our representative was listening carefully to small business owners, he wouldn't be voting the way he's voting. And that's why he needs to go. He may be a good guy, but he's not our guy. He doesn't vote with the interests and philosophy of our district.
Here's what gets me, and I ask listeners to think about this one for a second. I actually had this conversation with somebody the other day, our county executive, Bill Steinhaus, down here.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to Bill, Bill, this doesn't make sense. In our town, if you want a zoning variance to put a garage 5 feet too close to the property line, you have to go in and draw up your plans and submit them to the zoning board. You have to post legal notices in the paper. You have to wait 30 or 60 days for a comment period. We have that to build a garage 5 feet close to a property line, and yet we can pass cap and trade and healthcare, literally life-changing legislation, pass it in the middle of the night without the public being aware of it?
You know,